All right, I'm going to start this by being the voice of reason. I'm going to be the voice of reason on this topic. That's what DStyle is going to be. Now, granted, being the voice of reason doesn't always mean, okay, that what I'm going to say you're going to like. It just means it's going to be my perspective here. That's all it means. When it comes to Ronda Rousey, lover or hater, let's be honest, she's polarizing. A lot of people watch her fights. I mean, the people that don't like her have done multiple videos about her. Not everybody could be a polarizing figure. You know, that's not something that every single person out there could be. And not many sports athletes get to that level. Now, just because you're a polarizing figure, it doesn't mean you're like an all-time great per se. It just means you're polarizing. You know, there's just something about you that captivates people's attention. And Ronda Rousey has that, you know, if we're being honest. But with that said, two sides of the spectrum here are wrong. The side that was saying things like I'm talking about very extreme claims. You know, things like Ronda Rousey is the greatest or one of the greatest women's athletes ever. The best female athlete of this generation, or even the best female athlete active today. Right? The things, I mean, those were extreme claims. Very extreme claims. They were saying that she was the best athlete right now. She won an ESPY for Fighter of the Year and ESPY for Fighter of the Year. And you may say, oh, what? Because you beat Floyd? Let's put boxers aside, just MMA fighters. Do you really think Ronda Rousey was the best MMA fighter of the year? And we'll talk about that, right? What else? You know, the things that we're saying that she's a once-in-a-lifetime athlete. That's a big claim. Now, you know, that's a big-ass claim. But then the other side of the spectrum is flat out wrong too. Oh, she was overrated. Like most people saying that, by the way, do not follow and watch MMA. Now, let me backtrack a little bit. Is she overrated if you look at the other side of the spectrum, as far as like the real term of overrated? Like, then I would agree. Then yes, she's not the greatest shit since sliced bread, right? But that's not what people mean. Like most people, you know, you got to get into semantics here, but that's not what they really mean when they say that. And you could tell with just the things they say. Oh, she hasn't fought anybody. You know, she's all her opponents are handpicked, and we could get to all the nuances of that. But the reality is, she nearly wiped out her whole division. If she would have defeated Holm, there would be no one left in her division for her to beat. So I'm not sure that's a proper claim to make, right? And she did fight all comers. I mean, she just fought Holm. And if we're honest, most of the people that were claiming I knew she would lose, they didn't really go out on a limb and pick her. Like, in all honesty. Like, they did like a last second pick or some bullshit like that. Right? I picked her on Twitter, and it was like, you know, it's like a down low pick, if we're honest. Even me, I did a down low pick on fucking Twitter. Okay? That you know, they didn't do a breakdown of it and put the word out there and make it clear. You know, if we're honest. Which is, if you picked her, you picked her. I'm not going to take that away from you. I did the same shit, but it was a down low pick. We got to take down low picks with a grain of salt. Okay? Right? Look, I mean, it's not like she's a piece of shit athlete that wasn't worth shit and it was all media creation and that's it. But the other spectrum is wrong as well. They're both extremes. You know, the truth is, have you ever heard the term, like, it is what it is? She was the best female MMA fighter up until last Saturday. All right? And if you say, no, Cyborg, okay, Cyborg was busted for like juicing up. She's a fucking cheater, all right? She's a known cheater. Look at her, like, get the fuck out of here, okay? But let's say you still, for whatever reason, think highly of Cyborg, okay? Fine. She was the second best female fighter, and she was in a different division, all right? Not in the same division as Cyborg. A lot of people need to realize that, okay? Not the same division, but well, that's it. Nonetheless, she was recognized as the best in her division. You know? Not a lot of people could just do that. Not a lot of people could just become the best at something in a sport watched by millions of people. Right? So you can't just take that away from her. I won't, and you shouldn't either. Right? Now, I'm not going to go too far and make claims like the greatest athlete of our generation, you know, but I'll give her credit for that. She's also a medalist, not a gold medalist, all right? That means there's better judokas in her out there, females, but she was a very damn good judoka. She was a medalist in the Olympics. That's a hell of an accomplishment, right? Phenomenal throws. Her arm bars are unbelievable. Very good arm bars. Now, granted, this is where we have to talk about it. Should she have been the favorite against Holly Holm? Yes. Should she have been a whatever it was, like 20 to 1 or some crazy shit like that favorite? Absolutely not. That was insane. She should not have been that type of favorite. That was insane. All right? And I think what you saw here was the ignorance in the booking, right? And sometimes people just believe the hype. And I'm not saying she was a hype job. I'm talking about the hype of when you claim that someone is that big of a favorite, right? That there's such a favorite that's 20 to 1 against a top 10 contender. You're basically making it seem like people were saying things like she's going to destroy Holly Holm in less than 12 seconds. It's an easy fight. She's going to throw her down and just do whatever she wants with her, right? And which I want to dive into this discussion right now. That's, you know, the whole MMA boxing thing. I'm going to dive into it, but there was a lot of ignorance going into this fight. A lot of people, even here in the YTBC, were calling this a handpicked fight. A lot of the same people talking shit were calling it a handpicked fight. Those that really watch it and knew about Holly Holm knew this was not handpicked. Right? So, and we'll talk about Holly Holm in a little bit, because I want to really talk about her, but the truth is somewhere in the middle. She did talk shit, if we're honest. She brought it on to herself. All right? It's part of the sport. You got to be able to take it. All right? You got to be able to take the heat. You have to. The clowning, when you get knocked out, you got to take it. It's part of the sport. All right? A lot of you out there, you need to stop being so sensitive. All right? Stop being so sensitive. Okay? It's part of the sport. You get clowned when you get knocked out. Okay? That's the way it is. Especially if you talk shit. All right? Believe me. If Floyd Mayweather Jr. would have got knocked the fuck out, I would have clowned him. Right? Just like I was clowning Rousey that night. Alright? That's just the way it is. When you talk shit and you get knocked out, it's open season, okay, on getting clowned on. That's the reality of combat sports, okay? With that said, I hope this puts to rest the whole she's the greatest athlete ever and to rest. Okay? Holly Holm was never given the title of the greatest female athlete and all this shit. Holly Holm was a pound for pound best female boxer in the world. Okay? She was getting no support. Nobody in the YTBC did videos about her. Nobody talked about her or her fights. Okay? She was never on HBO. She was never on Showtime. Okay, she was nothing. Okay, she had little fights on independent pay-per-views that a couple thousand people watched. Right, almost all her fights were in New Mexico, where all her fan base is. All right, she got no attention, no love. That's the reality. Okay, she fought a lot of world-class female boxers. There's and you know, and if you didn't, you know, watch her, that's perfectly fine. I'm going somewhere with this. Before she was a boxer, she was a kickboxing champion, right? Very good kickboxer. She dove into boxing, conquered boxing. She went to MMA. And look, I know a lot of boxing fans that are in the know accuse her of ducking and all this other stuff. Look, she was in the sport for quite a while, all right? And then she wanted to go to MMA. It's not like she dove into something easier. She dove something out of her element, all right? She's the first athlete ever to win both major titles. You know, I'm talking WBC, okay, in boxing, and the UFC and MMA. She won major titles in both sports. The reality is that they always wondered who would be the first one to do it. Would it be an MMA fighter that would transition to boxing and win the world title in both? Or would it be a boxer? Well, the reality is boxing won already, right? Boxing did it first. There could only be one first. To all MMA fans out there, that's just the reality. You got to live with that, okay? But it stops there, all right? There's a lot of people. I understand you're excited, and I'm not faulting you, and you could talk shit if you want, but here's the reality, okay? It's when people are saying things, see, this is proof that a boxer could just beat up an MMA fighter. Relax with that shit, okay? That's not what last Saturday proved, right? It's not like Holly Holm just came from a boxing ring a couple months ago and just jumped into MMA and just beat the shit out of Holly Holm, right? While Holly Holm was still boxing world champion, she was training MMA, okay? She was training at Jackson's. Her training partners were MMA fighters, all right? Her boxing coach was part of a MMA team at Jackson's. It's not like she just dove into that and just decided to do her own thing or some shit. You know, it's just she had a team around her. They set her up. They slowly build her up. She had like 1 or 2 MMA fights while she was still boxing against, you know, girls that weren't that good but just testing the water. She went to a little small league and had some fights there, right? She was well prepared before this fight. She also has a kickboxing background. Right? When she was in the ground and Rousey was trying to get her in the armbar, that wasn't boxing that got her out of that. That was MMA training. Okay? Her wrestling coach, the jiu-jitsu, she worked on the armbars, and they had a judoka training with them, and it was an MMA team that helped her prepare for this. You know, so no, it didn't prove that. But what it does prove is that when fighter A fights fighter B, you know, the more prepared fighter's going to win. So if you're a great athlete, you could train, okay, and you could go to another sport and be successful, okay? Boxers are very good athletes. They have very good endurance, all right? And if they really dedicate themselves, like Holly Holm did, they could be a force in MMA, all right? That's what this proved. And we also learned is, as you saw, Ronda Rousey looked very amateurish, trying to box in any, or even strike in any form, shape, or fashion with Holly Holm. She just did not look prepared. She looked like she couldn't handle the heat. All right, it was out of her element. And keep in mind the reality that I want people to set in. Holly Holm is in her mid-30s. She's a late bloomer in this type of fighting. It's not like she was fighting a prime Holly Holm. Yet, a girl in her prime, Ronda Rousey, looked slower and looked like had inferior reflexes to Holly Holm. Okay, that's just the reality. Alright, so, and there's also a thing that I want to talk about, the halo effect, and I think it's in full effect here. You saw how amateurish she looked trying to strike with Holly Holm. But I heard people say dumb things like, "Oh, I saw her training, and my God, like she has amazing hand speed, and she's so ferocious, and she knocked out that Brazilian chick. You know, like she's unbelievable." That there was people were saying things like, Ronda Rousey could go to boxing and become a boxing world champion. From what I saw, no. You know, I'm not saying that there'll never be an MMA fighter that will transition into boxing and be a world champion. It's just going to take someone with phenomenal hands. You know, Ronda Rousey's not that girl. And also, that's the only thing they see in boxing, right? In MMA, the hands. Boxing, it's a lot more than the hands, okay? You know, there's the movement you do, and that's one thing that Holm talked about. I had to change a lot of what I did in boxing and transition it into MMA. So she was not utilizing pure boxing. Stop being ignorant, right? Stop saying things like, this is proof that a boxer could just jump into MMA and just do it. You know, could a boxer that's a great athlete jump into MMA, train for a couple years, slowly move up, have the right team behind him, and have success? Yes, right? But you're not going to jump into an octagon, right, and do the shoulder roll and expect to win. Like, that's just not the way it works, right? But with that said, that's my take. Congratulations, Holm. Peace out.